Hey guys, welcome back. You know, last year I went to quite a few different car shows like I always do. And it made me think about the cars that I really tend to gravitate towards. We all love the 68 to 70 Chargers, the 61 Cadillacs, the F-body Camaro and Firebirds. But I have to be honest, I was trying to think of the cars that I usually gravitate towards, and they are not those cars. They are not a 440 69 Charger. I gravitate towards the quirky cars, the odder cars that most people dislike. And it's not because I'm trying to be that guy, it's just because I really do take an interest in those cars. For one, I like the 91 to 93 Geo Metros. You know, they came with a 5-speed or a little 3-speed automatic, but they were a single 1-liter 3-cylinder engine, maybe 50 horsepower, 1,300 pounds. They were throwaway cars, but because they were throwaway cars, if you find one, it's super, super rare. And I just think they're quirky and I really like them. Subaru made a coupe in the 90s called the SVX. I really do like cars with numbers and letters like that, SVX. And it was supposed to be sort of a sporting car, but it was pretty big. It only came with an automatic. It had a 6-cylinder engine, but it had these windows which were fixed from about, your ear up, they were fixed. But then they had a little slide that came down, so the window really, in all honesty, was about half a window. Looked like an airplane. I had a friend in Kansas that did real estate who had one, and it was just as quirky to ride in as it is to look at. But I really did like that car, I'm sure I've passed up many 70 Chargers and 70 Impalas for these cars because they just stand out. Because at every car show in an area as small as ours, you're going to see the same people. There's only so many frame-off restored Chevy Chevelles. So you become kind of blind to them. I was at the car show in Prairie City last year, and I ended up seeing a 1960 Dodge Matador. And to be honest, the Matador, 1960 Dodge Matador, is probably my favorite classic car of all time. You will hardly ever see one. And sometimes you can go your whole life without seeing one because they only made it 1 year. The styling wasn't very preferred. It had tail fins like they all did, the big tail fins. But they didn't go all the way to the back because they wanted to emphasize the big taillights that looked like rocket engines, dual headlights, 2 round headlights up front, chrome everywhere. Its only claim to fame, which nobody would ever see or remember, was the dad from the TV show Leave It to Beaver drove that car, that 1-year only car. And I love that car. I have been fortunate enough to not just see that car, but I've seen a second one at the Good Guys car show 8 years ago. But that's one of my favorite cars. The interior was so over the top Art Deco that I just really enjoyed it. And I would much rather own one of those than I would own a 67, 68 Firebird because they're rare and they appeal to me because they're different. Another car that I would drive, I wouldn't probably own it, but I would drive it, is, and I'm going to get a lot of crap for this like I am the next one, was an early 80s Cadillac Cimarron. When GM came out with the J-body cars, they were just small little economical vehicles, the Cavaliers and the Sunfires and the Sunbirds. Well, GM's Cadillac division, they decided they needed a small car so that they could go against the Saab 900s, the Volvo 240s, and the BMW 3 Series. Well, they needed a car fast, so usually it takes 3 to 4 years to get a car from concept to the street. They did it in 1 year, and it's because they told them to take the J-body Chevy Cavalier and massage it to make the Cadillac Cimarron. So basically what you got was a Chevy Cavalier with different front end styling, different rear end styling, some badges, and inside you got some leather trim, and then they just basically made it look like aluminum. That car was laughed at. In fact, to this day, the president of Cadillac has a huge poster of the Cimarron on his wall with the words, "Lest we forget," so that they don't do that ever again, because it just turned everybody off. It was like selling a Chevy Cavalier for $15,000 more than a Chevy Cavalier, and there really wasn't much to differentiate it. Had a little 1.8 liter motor to begin with that put out nothing, and then they finally upped it to a 2 liter, massive engine. But I like it. I would drive it just to go to a show and say that I have a Cimarron. I've only seen one Cadillac Cimarron in my whole life, and that car was at a salvage yard in Kansas City, and it had been picked over, but I've never seen one out in the wild myself. Another car that I like, that I know this will be the one that makes people question my entire thought process, the Pontiac Aztek. I know it has been named the ugliest car of all time, but there's just something about that front end styling with the 4 grille openings and the lights here and the lights stacked up here and the fog lights on the bottom. It definitely is a vehicle that has an acquired taste. I think I'm the only person except one other that I've met that likes the Pontiac Aztek. The rear that slopes down and then goes flat, and it's glass all the way, even with the spoiler. 3400 engine, not very good. 4-speed transmission, not very good. You know, I joke that I'd like to have a vehicle that looks like that maybe had a Toyota drivetrain in it, but I don't know, like it on most websites, everyone knows it's rated the worst and the most ugly car of all time, the ugliest car of all time, but I really, really like it. I really, really think it's a pretty good car. You know, another car that I've really thought was kind of nice, but it's kind of gone by the wayside, was the Honda Prelude. You know, the Honda Prelude, people love the styling of every generation of Honda Prelude. It's just you don't see very many Preludes anymore, which showed that they didn't sell as many. We've got a kid in town here who has a red, the last generation of Prelude, and it's in really good shape. It's got the 5-speed manual transmission, but if you think about it, think about Honda Del Sols, a CRX, a Civic hatchback. When do you ever hear of a Prelude? That's one of the things I like about those cars, is that if you see one, it's special and it means something. It's different. I like different cars, you know. I feel like if you're going to invest your money in something, you should invest it in something that if you pull up into a parking lot, people can say, "Oh yeah, I know that car. I've seen it around town." You don't want to pull up into a parking lot and have people go, "Oh yeah, that's cool." That's really sad, but that's what's happened now to the 68 to 70 Chargers. Like I said, it wouldn't matter if that car was the General Lee or in the Fast and Furious. Those are a beautiful body style. They're really beautiful cars. But because of those shows, people have become blind to that body style Charger, which is really sad, because when I was at Good Guys a number of years ago, there was an older man who had frame-off restored a 440 4-speed 68 Dodge Charger. People would walk by this thing and they would say, "Oh wow, look, it's the General Lee. Oh wow, look, it's from the Fast and the Furious." And then they would just keep walking. They didn't even really give it much attention. And that shows that that's been out for long enough now that people are just becoming blind to it. People aren't blind to a 60 Matador because they've never seen one. People aren't blind to a Pontiac Aztek, probably because it's really ugly, but it's different. And like I said, I think if you're gonna put your money into something quirky that's a one-off is also a much better way to win at a car show, because at Good Guys in Des Moines, F-bodies, the Firebirds and Camaros, you know, how many first-generation Camaros do you see at a car show? That's why they call it the everyman's muscle car, pony car, whatever you want to call it. But there's so many of them that you just realize that a Camaro's not going to win. It's going to be that when the judges are walking by 200 cars and they get to the end of it, the car they're going to pick is going to be one where they go, "Did you see that? Hey, was that a..." They're not going to look at it and go, "Oh, another 69 Camaro. Wow, I haven't seen a Camaro since the last row of cars where I saw 3 Camaros." So I would say that I enjoy the quirky cars better, and I enjoy, you know, some car shows are judged by judges, and some car shows, the ones that we like to go to, you actually have a say in the judging. You get to pick usually two cars, two numbers, and then they tally up the votes. I always would say, pick the one, because here's the other thing too. When you think about trying to restore a car, it's not that hard to restore a 69 Mustang or a 69 Camaro because there's so many aftermarket companies making body parts for that. How hard do you think it was for that guy to restore that 60 Matador? It was a 1 year only car. It's not like there's parts all over the place. It's not like there's, a huge aftermarket for parts. That guy did that without any of that support. So maybe if you guys go to car shows, or maybe if you don't go to car shows, maybe if you just drive around and you see something that's quirky, you see something that's different, or you see something that stands out, put it in the comments. Let me know what you see, because I think we all can see cars that don't just blend in. Chevy Malibus blend in, Ford Tauruses blend in, but a Subaru SVX, if you saw it in the parking lot, that would not blend in at all. A Honda Prelude, that also wouldn't. If you saw a Cadillac Cimarron, then you saw a unicorn. Well, thanks for joining me, and I hope you come next time. All right, see you later.